So this is the Parent Talk and Q&A. This is a very scary topic for parents because it's a world no one's used to. Even if you are an American-born parent, this is scary because the world has changed, I feel like, in the last 10 years more than it has in the past 40 years. And so you compound that with being an immigrant or being outside of your country or being in a place that's foreign, and that corresponds to a lot of fear. And I understand that fear and I appreciate that fear. I have 3 kids of my own. And even though my kids are in college and I consider myself, safe, in the safe zone, no kid's safe ever, but I'll have grandkids someday, and the fear of that starts to even haunt me. I was talking with someone, and he was talking about that issue. And this is an issue that's being addressed in Egypt as well. This is a series by Abu Nadoud Lem'i. I highly recommend it if you understand Arabic. It's a 4-part series on YouTube, and it's really quite good. And you would be amazed how open-minded the people in Egypt are. I've heard several talks now at churches, and the approach is very, very loving, which I found very interesting. Certainly Abu Nadoud Lem'i's approach is very balanced, and it's a loving approach and a very truthful approach. What we find in society today is there is a lot of LGBTQ representation everywhere you go. And the most alarming thing that we see now is children cartoons. A lot of children cartoons, a lot of children movies have gay partners in the movie where here you have 2 princes in a cartoon, and it's just kind of all over the place for these younger kids. And then corporations are certainly getting into it. We have Pride Month, and as we know, Pride Month is a very big moneymaker for corporations. And so everybody has a flag, everyone has the rainbow, everyone has, even on soccer teams, you'll see people with their jerseys and they'll all be wearing a flag. And of course, unfortunately, it's not that these corporations really care about anybody. What they really care about is money, right? And it looks good to put a flag on your jersey because then people tune in and they watch your show or whatever the case may be. And so they're appealing to this kind of movement. In the schools, the books that sometimes the kids are asked to read are very forward, right? So this is Our Mother's House. This is LGBT picture books, and this is a book with some possibly explicit pictures. In some books you'll find very inappropriate sex acts and sexual things, and the book will say ages 10 and up. And so a lot of these things, of course, are just going to drive fear into our hearts. And I understand that fear. And as a parent, for those of you in college, you don't know yet, but when you're a parent, you die for your kid, right? And protecting your kid, there's a reason the expression mama bear exists, right? Mama bear protects her young. And whenever anyone tries to hurt your child in any way, physical, spiritual, emotional, there's a protective instinct that parents have that's vicious, right? And will fight back to the death to protect a child. And this is a God-given instinct, right? And it's a beautiful instinct. So when we see things like this and we perceive them to be threatening our children, our reaction can be very, very strong and very, very harsh. In the schools, we have daddy, papa, and me, mommy, mama, and me. And what you start to see is these trends in the data that are just kind of alarming. So you see the number of adults who identify themselves as LGBTQ by generation. And the Gen Z generation, those born in 1997 to 2003, is double the millennials generation, which is double the Gen X generation, which is my generation. And this is a very difficult statistic to reconcile in any way, shape, or form. Why are so many young people, this is 1 in 5 young people identify as LGBTQ. A fifth. And why it's doubling from every 10, 15 years is very difficult to understand, right? So, societally, and it's increasing around the world, right? And especially in Europe. And there aren't very many good biological, natural explanations for this. You can argue that people were always, LGBTQ, but now that we have a woke society, they're allowed to come out and express themselves. That's a possibility, but it's difficult to explain why so few adults, older people, are changing and becoming and coming out as LGBTQ. So as parents, we have so many questions, and I know so many of you have questions, and so many of you want your questions answered. And some of the questions I get a lot of, my kid is asking why their friend has 2 moms or 2 dads, and they want to know. One said her son's 4th grade friend now looks like a girl, is transitioning 4th grade, and her son is confused. Finding books that have same-gender couples' parents, and they discover it after the child reads it and asks why. And you have no idea this was assigned for homework. How much to limit exposure or restrict interactions, but still teach love and tolerance? How much should I keep my kid in a bubble and try to prevent them from seeing all of these things, or at the same time letting them be in the world and live in the world? What if my child has a friend who's gay, or someone who's known to be gay at school? How can I show kindness and be a Christian without being influenced by some potentially, negative thoughts and exposure? Is it okay for 2 men or 2 women to get married and or have children? And how do you answer that without being judgmental when one of your kids asks you that? Tough questions. Can I attend a gay wedding? Always a popular one. What's wrong with being gay? Should we be explaining LGBTQ and pronouns and genders to our kids proactively before the school does it? What do I do if I sense my child is leaning towards homosexuality? I sense my boy is effeminate and has no interest in women or girls. And should I keep my convictions against the acts of homosexuality to myself? Is it so widely prevalent? It is so widely prevalent and acceptable now that I can very well be ostracized for expressing my true feelings. So these are the questions we all have, and these are very difficult questions to grapple with. And so what I want to push back on a little bit, and I know you're not going to like me too much when I say this, but what we need to push back against a little bit is looking for an easy answer to a complicated question. Because when we just say, what do I say to someone? Well, then I have to ask you a lot more questions, right? And the answer to, how do I answer this? Well, I have a lot of questions for you. How old is the person who's asking? Is it a 5-year-old? Is it a 15-year-old? Is it a 25-year-old? I need to know that answer before I tell you how to answer, correct? It's specific. How old are you? Are you 17? Are you arguing with someone in high school? Or are you an adult arguing with a child? Or are you an adult arguing with an adult or discussing? What's your relationship with this person like? Is it someone in class? Is it a good friend? Is it a spouse? How close is this relationship? Where is this contact? Is it at school? Is it work? Is it church? Is it gym? The context is very important. There are laws about certain types of speech in the workplace, in school. How you say the truth must be measured. And I'm going to really focus on this point today. Not just saying what's true may not always be what's wise and what's Christian. It's not all about, I have to say the truth at all times. Sometimes I want to win over the person in front of me. Sometimes I want to have a discussion with someone in an open-minded way. Simply just going after the person, usually what happens is they fight back, right? And if you go and you attack someone's religion, for example, and you say, Buddhists are wrong. Well, they're going to say, well, Christians are wrong. And we're just going to have a fight. You're not going to win anybody over. It doesn't work that way. Some people aren't even seeking the truth. So if I want to have a discussion with someone who is uninterested in the truth yet, how's that discussion go? How did Jesus talk with different kinds of people? How did he talk with the Pharisees versus an adulterous woman, versus a leper, He talked differently with each person. It was subtle. And unfortunately, what happens in some of these shouting matches is no one is actually listening. We're just shouting over each other. I'm just waiting for you to stop talking because I know you're wrong. I'm not listening. And then I'm just gonna, say what I'm gonna say, right? You said like 2 words, and I think I know what they're gonna say. I stop listening and I wait for my turn to tell you why you're wrong. And no one ends up listening. So you don't have a dialogue or a discussion or healthy understanding of one another. Instead, it's just a shouting match. Again, no fruit from those kind of interactions. And unfortunately, we see in our world today, especially in politics, you see the result of this, right? We're not getting anywhere in politics. The country is more polarized than it's ever been. People are angrier with each other than it's ever been. Democrats hate Republicans, Republicans hate Democrats, and no one's talking. And this is the outcome of this kind of short spurt argument. When I don't listen, I don't impound, I don't want to think about what's going on. Okay. So this is an important time for you and for your children and for the church. The challenges are pressing and there's a great need, and the need is great. And so what we want to talk about today are strategies that will help young people set their hope in God. Now I want to say that one more time. What's the strategy for? Set their hope in whom? In God. I didn't say create moral behavior. I didn't say shame other people in the schools. I didn't say change the bad people and make them understand they're all going to hell. I didn't say any of those things, right? I said put their hope in God, because in the end, that's the only thing that's going to work long term. And the thing I'm going to talk about today is strategies and an approach, because I don't think any of us really disagree on the position. We all agree on this, on what our view of homosexual activity is. We don't believe it's sanctioned by God, we don't believe it's blessed by God, and we don't believe it's natural, the natural way of things. No one thinks that. So what I'm going to suggest to you today is not what we believe, but I want to talk about how we should talk about it and how we should approach it. Because with the kids, it's all about how you approach things, not about what you say, but how you say it. And you have to realize that your kids are different than you 2 ways. For those of you who've come from Egypt, they are different from you culturally. And I can't tell you how sad it makes me when I see so many parents like my parents' age, who've been in the United States from 1970 and 1975, and they've raised their kids and they made all these mistakes. And then I see the same mistakes being made again right now, 50 years later. It's a crime. And it feels like we should be passing on our collective knowledge of how to approach these issues. So your kids are American, and that's okay. That's not a bad word. Sometimes you hear someone say, "Ana الولد أمرك," right? الولد أمرك means he drinks and he has sex and he does all these bad things. No, that's not amrak, that's sin. Because in Egypt, these things happen too, don't they? So when we just demonize the culture and we say the Americans are bad, the culture is bad, these people are bad, and we are good, it doesn't really work, right? Because what happens is your kids are going to go to school and they're going to find good people. And they're going to say, you know what, I have a friend, Dad, who's American, and he's very good. And his dad's very good. And you say, no, Americans are bad. Stay away from the Americans. Stay away from those people out there. And they're going to say, you know what, I think that person is better than the people at church. And I think he's better than you, Baba. And it's not going to be effective. You can try it, but I'm telling you now, it's not going to be effective. It will push the kid further away from you and alienate you from him. So what I want to focus on is how we talk about these things. Most young people abandon their Christian faith while they are still at home with their parents. In fact, the statistic is junior high school. By junior high or high school, kids have already decided, I'm going to stop going to this church when I turn 18. And we have lost thousands of kids. My age, the old people, I was born in the United States, I was raised in the United States, I saw lots of my friends of my youth group, very few still go to church. Of all the people I've known, very few are still around. 70% tend to leave. It's a very scary statistic. But the young people who leave the church are still interested in spiritual things. What does that mean? They're not leaving because they're bad. Some are leaving because they're very good. Some are leaving because they're looking for spirituality, real spirituality. Some are leaving because they're tired of the hypocrisy. They're tired of the bigotry. They're tired of the judgment. And they want to be very, very, very Christian. They are not lost causes, and they are willing to listen if we listen to them first. First approach of a parent: 2 ears, 1 mouth. Listen twice as much as you speak. Listen, listen, listen. Just the other day, someone was telling me her story, just about a problem in the service, and she said, and when she was done, I told her what every other Abuna had said. And she goes, yeah, that's what everyone else said too. She goes, but you know what, you're the only one who listened to me. All of them cut me off. I said one sentence, I go, okay, listen, here's what you got to do. But you listened. Be the parent who listens and who wants to hear what your kids have to hear. When does it start? At that age, when they're really little and the stuff they say is really dumb. That's the stuff you have to listen to when it's super boring. And you have to let them know you're interested in what they have to say. And you have to build that foundation, plant those seeds when they're little and saying the really foolish things, because when they get older, they'll start to go to you. And remember, they don't think those things are foolish. They think they're really, really important. And you should think they're really, really important as well. And we need to address this before the world does. Don't say, no, we shouldn't talk about that, da'ib. We don't talk about sex, da'ib. We don't talk about homosexuality, da'ib. That doesn't work. We need to talk about these things in the church over and over again. The kids should hear about these things in the church or from their parents before the world talks to them. Get to them early. And if you think my kid's a little too young, they're in high school, they don't know anything about sex, you're wrong. They do. And I want you to think about what you knew at that age and then triple it. Because that's what they know. They have the internet. And despite your best attempts at blocking things on the internet, it doesn't work. They can find it anywhere. Naveen's scared. Right, so Naveen's like, no, you don't know how well I block things. Okay. And this is important, not because we want to shield them from the world, because we're called by Jesus to be what? The light of the world. He says we don't light a lamp and put it under a basket in Troy with beautiful icons, correct? Light in here doesn't help. We're all not supposed to light up this church. We're supposed to take from the fountain of life, the Eucharist, the Word of God, and then we go and we become light to the world. So our kids are going to be light to the world. You have to be light of the world. So my objective isn't shield them, protect them, keep them from the bad things, because eventually they have to go out there. My objective is to strengthen them from the inside, right? And if you think about this in terms of physical sickness, how do you keep your kid healthy? Well, I can keep him in his room, and then it gets exposed to any viruses, and he'll never get sick. But guess what? You have a kid without immunity. You have a kid who doesn't know how to do anything, right? The better thing to do is you teach him, well, if someone's sneezing, don't kiss them, right? But you should get some sleep, get vitamin C, get exercise, be healthy, eat well, and build their immunity from the inside out, because the viruses are out there. They're everywhere. They're at the schools, they're everywhere. So spiritual life works the same way. Protectionism doesn't really work. I mean, age appropriate, right? When they're 4, protect, okay? But as they get older, as a parent, you need to be pushing and leaning towards independence. You want them to be on their own. You want them to handle things by themselves. You want them to be able to see an issue, figure out, address it. And the only way they can do that is if you are guiding them, constantly guiding their perspective. Why? Because you're listening and they're talking. And the more they talk, the more you can guide. And so what we want to do is create kids who are strong, not scared, not hateful, not bigoted, not racist, but kids who are strong. What does strong mean? Full of love. There is nothing stronger than kindness. There is nothing stronger than love. That's the bond that is stronger than all of the other bonds. Fear does not work. Fear will turn on you. Fear will drive them into hatred, and you don't want that. You don't want a child like that. So, people who are same-sex attracted, it's a scary world out there for us, right? And there's lots of issues. We have politics. People are talking about gay marriage and what should we, what are the rights and what are states' rights and what should we vote for, etc. People are talking about switching genders. There are kids who want to change their genders, have a surgery, have puberty stopped, take hormone treatments. Some under 18. There are school curriculums that I've mentioned already, and those are scary as well. And then there's the media. Disney has already committed to having half of their characters be LGBTQ or minority in all movies. So all of these issues, each one, I encourage you to address and to think about. If your school curriculum is not up to your standards, I encourage you to go to a PTA meeting and I encourage you to say something. And if you feel like these cartoons are not appropriate, I encourage you to not have your kids watch those cartoons. But what I fear is sometimes these issues reduce this, the message that people who are same-sex attracted are people. They're human beings. They're God's sons. They're not the enemy. The enemy is Satan. And the more you can get that, the easier it will be to answer that long list of questions I told you earlier. So I don't want to give you a bunch of answers today. If your kid is 6 and he asks you this question and his friend is from church, then you say this. But his friend's from school, then you say this. And if your kid is 9 and he asks you that question, right? That doesn't end well. So what I would like you to do today is I want you to get a feel for the way God views these people, right? And the way God thinks about all of us as sinners. So what's the best way to handle this topic, which is the question all of us are going to talk about? We're not going to talk about these 4 things. So these 4 things, I encourage you, we can have other talks about them. But for your kids and for this church, it's important to focus on the human being behind this. This isn't a movement. This isn't an issue. This isn't propaganda. This isn't an agenda that's trying to get our kids. That's all fear. And one thing that we know about fear is fear does not make good decisions. Fear does not make good decisions. Every time a parent makes a decision in fear, it's an overreaction. In fact, if you look at the one thing Jesus said more than anything else was what? Fear not. Fear is from the devil. Every time you are scared, that is not from God. And in fact, we see this in the saints. One of the characteristics of saints that's always kind of in the cynics are there, courageous, no fear. Stare at some emperor and just shout him down. Who does that? Someone who is not scared. These soldiers, these people, they put a sword in your heart in a heartbeat if you just spoke the wrong way. And they would just stare at you, and these saints would say whatever they wanted. There's no fear. And so I encourage you, whenever you find yourself scared, well, what if my kids do this? What if my kids get in the wrong decision? What if my kids hang out with this gay boy and then he makes my kid see things that, I don't want him to see? What if one of these kids come into the church and then they affect the other kids? What if and you start getting more and more fearful. And once you're in that heightened state, the things that come out of your mouth at that point aren't going to be very useful. In fact, they may have the opposite effect. I told a story last night about my daughter, and I'll tell it again because I think it's useful. My daughter came up to me, she's in the 9th grade, and she said, "You know, Dad, most of the girls in my class are gay. Most of them are lesbians." So I took a deep breath, we're driving, and I waited a little bit, and I have to tell the story in its full effect. I waited 5 seconds, and I said, what percentage do you think is gay? And she said, like 75%. So then I waited 10 seconds. I said, that's quite a bit. She goes, yeah. And then I said, the national average in the country is only 5%. She goes, really? I said, yeah. And then I waited 10 seconds. And I said, that's a lot. 75% is a lot higher than 5%, isn't it? She goes, yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, that seems a little high to me. She goes, it does. And then I let her talk a little bit. And I said, when you come out as gay, do people give you a lot of attention at school? She goes, oh yeah. They have a party for you. There's a club you can join. Everyone celebrates you. You post it on Instagram. A big hoopla. So I waited 10 seconds and I said, well, do you think maybe some girls come out and pretend to be gay when they're not really gay because they want all this attention? And she goes, I think you're right. Yeah, I bet you that's what. And she starts giving me names of girls. Well, she did that, and I know she had a boyfriend and she's not gay. And she did that, and she starts telling me all this stuff. And I let her talk, and I let her talk, and I let her talk. And then I wait another 5 seconds. I go, it makes me so sad that those girls have to pretend to be somebody else just to get attention. And I made them human beings, not a movement, not an agenda, not the devil, people. And that we have to love those people and have compassion on those people. And she goes, yeah, I feel really bad for those people, those girls. I can't believe they pretend to do stuff like that. I feel bad that that's the way they have to live their lives. And what I want to show you from this interaction, I use it, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to brag. I'm trying to say this calm approach increased dialogue. I left gaps. I just let the car be quiet so she could talk, so I could hear what she has to say. And then I listened very carefully to what she had to say. And most importantly, I did not get angry. And I want to say that again. No matter what your kid tells you, no matter what, don't get angry. Because what happens when you get angry, and the kids now aren't like us. Our parents yelled at us all the time. That was just the normal volume, okay? And we got used to it, right? But kids now don't do that. They don't do yelling all the time. And as soon as you start yelling, they shut down, and they stop engaging, and they stop talking to you. And if you bring up, if they bring up whatever, the prom, and you go, prom, that's for the bad kids, and you start yelling, they're going to be like, okay, I won't talk to my parents about prom. That's off the list. Next thing, premarital sex. And you start yelling. And now the kid says, okay, I won't talk to my parents about that. And every time you yell, the kid scratches one issue off, right? Think about you and your parents. Are there things you don't talk to your parents about? Yeah. Why? You were taught a lesson. You try to bring it up to them, has za'uk, and so you stopped. Right? They yelled at you, they screamed, and so you don't talk about those issues. So you want to keep that dialogue open as humanly possible. So I want to clarify what I said yesterday, and I apologize again. I realized there was middle schoolers, but as I started talking, the fact that they're middle schoolers, I should have changed what I said. What I asked the kids to say is I told them to talk to their parents about everything that pertains to them. But to be careful, and as this is more for high schoolers and college, that you don't share secrets of other people with someone who shouldn't be told. Because what happens a lot of times is two kids will be talking, share something very private, and then someone goes and tells their mom. and then the other kid finds out and says, "You told your mom what I told you?" Yeah. Then that friendship is done. Worse, mom goes and tells other people. This happens all the time. We're Egyptian. So now we have a big problem. Now Abuna's getting the calls, right? And this can destroy families, it destroys relationships, it destroys churches, and it causes a lot of headache for Abuna, right? So what I ask the kids to do is, if someone says something to you in confidence, if it's someone's secret, would you want your friend to tell their parents? If one of your kids shares something with their friend at a retreat, do you want that friend to go tell their mom or their dad? And I think the answer would be no. We'd like to keep things more confidential. But I encourage them to talk to you guys about other things. Okay. So let's talk very quickly. I hope that's okay. I know you all hate me. So let's talk very quickly about 3 perspectives in this, when we think about same-sex attracted people. First one, what's God's view, the biblical view? First thing, Jesus does not say that people with sexual thoughts and feelings are guilty of sexual sin. So if I have same-sex attraction and I suffer from same-sex attraction, or I'm struggling against same-sex attraction, or I'm 15, I'm 16, and I feel these things occasionally, that's not a sin. Okay? In fact, that could even be a very normal part of puberty, a normal part of growth. And when your kid comes across and says, maybe if they're open enough with you to say this, or maybe you hear it from someone else, or you're advising someone else's kid, it's okay to say, that's normal. That happens. Sometimes you have a friend who's a girl and you're really close with her and you really like her, and this has happened many, many times. And then after a few years, it kind of fades and you get married and everything goes, the way the standard normal way goes. Right? So it's okay to tell them that this is part of normal development. What becomes issue, it's virtually impossible not to have such thoughts, right? As a heterosexual male, right, I'm attracted to women. That's just the way I am. That's the way God made me, okay? So that isn't the sin. The sin is when I act upon those thoughts. And so Jesus says people become guilty of sexual sin when they look intentionally, lustfully upon another person. So this could be looking lustfully at another person, pornography, or even going further and, having sexual relations with someone, etc. So I want to distinguish between having same-sex attraction and doing something about it, right? Having same-sex attraction, we don't actually fully understand what causes that. It's very difficult to know. There are lots of correlations between trauma, abuse, dad and mom issues, but we don't fully comprehend what it is, and it's certainly not predictive. There are people who are abused who are not gay. There's people who had sexual trauma that are not gay. So you can't predict very easily. So don't draw any conclusions. Don't say people are gay because that sentence is almost always going to be false. Human beings cannot actively choose their sexual feelings and dispositions. This is just kind of something that happens. However, they can choose to accept and act on them, or resist and reject them. This is like the rest of us. We're all in the same boat. Right? I can't actively choose not being a heterosexual male. I don't get a choice there, but I can choose not to act on them, and I can choose to reject those feelings. That's my choice, and that's what God's going to judge me on. So I just want to make that small distinction. So we have matrimony, sacramental matrimony. That's a union between one man and one woman. Male and female were created for union with each other. Sacramental marriage is the only proper context for sexual relationships. And sexual union is ordained by God and thus deemed as good. And so one thing that's very important for those of you raising kids, don't make the topic of sex taboo. Don't make it bad. Don't make it koch, okay? Make it something you talk about, you engage in. It's okay. And in fact, the kids at school are talking about it way before you even knew your kid knew, right? So talk to them about it. Let them know I'm open. Even in this very, very taboo topic, I'm open. You can talk to me. and I don't get angry, and I don't judge, and I don't say all the Americans are bad, and I don't say those things. Okay? So any sexual gratification outside of marriage is not consistent with God's plan, and this is not what's intended for man. I want to focus on one thing. With your kids, don't use the word abnormal. It'll trigger them. They'll be very upset if you say this is abnormal. The better thing to say is this is not consistent with God's plan. Because in school, everyone is taught there is no normal and abnormal. There's just everybody, okay? And your kid may unnecessarily get very upset with you if you say, Dad, don't say they're abnormal, okay? Just say, this is not the way God intended it, right? And that's a more precise statement anyway. Pornography, adultery, fornication, it's all the same, and it doesn't matter if it's homosexual or heterosexual. And this is a point I want to impress upon you. We have this special thing about homosexual sin versus heterosexual sin. They're the same in God's eyes. The one isn't worse than the other. Both of them are deviations from the natural order that God put in place, right? And so both of them should be viewed equally. Many kids will say, why does everyone make such a big deal about this? I've heard parents say, I've heard moms tell me, I don't mind if my boy sleeps around as long as he's not gay. And you have to ask yourself, well, what is that? What religion is that? What are we doing? Right? And so she's like, oh, that's fine, as long as it, right? And that's scary, right? Because now this thing has become a thing that's much bigger than every other thing, right? And that's just not the way Christianity works. Next approach, so that was God's view. Next approach is the priest's view. This is our Abuna Krellos Ibrahim. So I took a picture of him from the internet, put up there last night. He's a cutie. So now the priest's view. Who ultimately makes the decision as to whether or not someone can take communion? Have any of you ever wondered, should a gay person take communion? Should a gay person serve? Should a gay person be a deacon? What if they're open? What if they're not? Have you guys ever talked about it? I would like to tell all of you right now, it's none of your business. Don't worry about it. Look in the mirror and focus on yourself. Whose job is it? It's the priest's job. And the priest has this unenviable job, one I would not want in a million years, of ascertaining whether someone is struggling and whether or not the person has decided that the sin is no longer a sin. And that's Abuna's job, and he does it one-on-one, private, confidential, personal, and deep. That's his call. It's not your call. It's not even your business. And many lives have been ruined because everyone made everyone else's business their business. Please don't do that. It has to stop. The taking communion is a pastoral decision made in private, I just said this, with tremendous love and compassion. Let the priests be priests. You are not a priest. Let them do their entrusted work without second-guessing them, criticizing them, and attacking them. I was recently in a situation where the priest was worried what all the people are going to attack him for. And the priest had to make a different decision than the one he wanted because he was afraid of all the people attacking him. So I told him, Abuna, I'll come there and attack the people back for you. Okay. So now we go to the third, yes sir.
So, to the previous point.
Okay.
Okay, sure. We will have Q&A.
We'll have Q&A at the end, but he did just raise his hand and interrupt me, so I'll just let
sorry for
I'm
jumping
kidding,
the
I'm
gun,
kidding.
but just to this point, when you so the question, I understand that it's none of our business, but to the question, do we decide if someone is gay? So when you say that, are you drawing a distinction between someone who is gay and acting on it versus someone who is same-sex attracted, like in the previous point? Like,
It's none of my business either.
so either way, it's just none of our business. Okay, thank you.
All right. I could say something worse, but it's not appropriate in church. I've learned that. I found this picture. This is as Egyptian of a family as I could find on the internet. I tried to get there. Other ones were blonde or Asian, so it's just isn't going to work. All right, so now what's my perspective as a Christian parent? Okay, what's my role? As lay people, not priests, brothers and sisters in Christ, we're members of the same body, and we have a different perspective. What's my role? It's not called to judge. That's God's job. You're not God. It's not called to decide on the relation with the priest. That's the priest's job. So what's my job? We are simply called to love our neighbors as ourselves. This is the biblical commandment. I'm not making this stuff up. This is stuff Jesus said. Love your neighbor as yourself and love your God with all your heart and all your mind. Right? That's the command. And we have to think about the way Christ interacted with us and be like him as much as we possibly can in every way. Keep it Christ focused. You know those little bracelets the kids have, WWJD? Wear one and then stare at it every time you want to make a decision. And that to me is the easiest way to make most decisions. So what I want to talk to you today about is how to be and live the gospel. Your kids will learn more from you than they will from the school. Believe me. Your kids will watch you more than they watch anything else. Believe me. And your kids will be just like you. Believe me. How do I know? Because all of you are just like your parents. Y'all remember that day when you're about 22 and you said that thing that your dad says and you're like, oh my God, that's what my dad says. You did the thing your mom did and you're like, oh my God, that's what my mom does. I swore I'd never be like my mom, but here I am. I'm just like her. That happens. Wait till you're 30 and 40 and 50. I even cough the same way my dad coughs. They will be like you, right? Be Christ, and they will be like Christ. Show them the light of Christ. Treat them the same way Christ treats us. Because you are the model of Christ to a little child, right? When they look at you, they see God. They think about God in terms of you. I'll tell you a story. One time there was a woman, she's like 27, 28, and she's telling me about how bad the church is. The church says I have to get married, and the church says I can't wear this, and the church says I can't have gay friends, and the church says, and she's yelling at all the things the church says. And I know this girl very well, and at some point I said to her, I don't think the church says all those things, I think it's your dad. And she just stopped and she went, oh my gosh, yeah, every time I said one of those things, I was actually imagining my dad talking. And so her dad became the model of God. They're going to learn about who God is from you. Not because you're preaching and talking and yelling and condemning. No, they're going to see how you treat your wife. They're going to see how you treat the waiter in the restaurant. They're going to see how you treat the maid. They're going to see how you treat your boss and your employee. They're going to learn about how to be Christ-like from your actions, not from your words, not from your speeches, not from forcing them to come and forcing them to go to this class and forcing them to go to that class. That's not what they're going to learn. They're going to watch you, and believe me, they watch you all the time. Looking at how Christ looks at all of us and how we are called to look at each other as Christians. Focus on this. And this is, believe me, the only approach that will ever work. And this is the only approach that Christ used. And this is the only approach that history has ever shown to be effective. You want to raise Christian kids? Be Christian. You want to raise loving kids? Be loving. And they're going to be just like you. So the focus is on whom? Yourself. More so than anything else. And many of the saints talk about how you should calmly parent. Very calm. Not angry, not agitated, not yelling, but calm and confident. In me? No. Confident in their Father. And that spirit is just absorbed by the kids, right? If I had gone after my daughter and said, you know, those kids aren't lesbian and they're just trying to brainwash you, and this is an agenda and this is a movement and you have to be careful from these kids, and some of them are not raised in Christian homes and some of them will teach you bad things, what would have happened? She would have defended them. she would have attacked me and protected her friends at school. But when she felt my calmness, she got calm and she goes, oh, okay, these girls are out there, they're in the world, nothing I can do about it, and at least I can have love and sympathy towards them. And she knows how I feel, she sees mommy and daddy, she knows it's not mommy and mommy, so she's okay with that. And she gets the way it should be, because she has that stable base at home. Okay. Take a buna. All right, so I don't know, how much time do I have? Probably 12. How much longer? We start Q&A soon. Okay, all right, I'll skip all this stuff. Okay, what do I tell my kids? Because everyone wants to ask the question, can my kids have gay friends? So we should just get to that question at some point, since that's the only reason anyone's here. And again, I want to point out that there's no easy answer to that question. And if you learn one thing from today's talk, the answer is there is no easy answer to that question. And if you want to say the right thing, just be the right thing. Be the right person. When they feel your love, they will have love. When they feel your respect, they will have respect. Right? The more you can get right in your own mind, the more your kids will naturally absorb it. So what do? First thing, get educated. There's these great websites out there, this one, access.org. It's called the Culture Translator. It's wonderful. If you want to learn about American culture, I have to do the same thing because the kids invent new languages every few years, every few weeks, it appears like. They keep saying new words and they're like, you don't know that word? And I'm like, no, because it's not English. But they keep inventing them, right? This is a good way to keep up to date on what's going on. And they talk about different things that the kids say, different trends that are out there, things that are streaming, things that are trending, so that you can at least be, relevant when talking with them. So what do I tell my kids? This is what Abuna Bishoy Kamel says, and I love this quote. People don't need to hear about Christ anymore. They have heard enough. Rather, they need to see Christ in us. One slide, if you can just, this. You want your kids to be whatever? Be. And they're just going to be just like you. And the more you talk, the less they do. And the more you be, the more they are. Let them see it in you. And again, I'm not saying force them to go to church early and force them to go to the meeting and force them to go to the mosque and force them to go to wherever else. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, how do you treat your sister, the one who stabbed you in the back? How do you treat your mom, the one who's always yelling at you? How do you treat your friend, the one who didn't respect you? How do I treat the people around me? They watch, they see, they learn. This is what's important. St. John Chrysostom says there would be no need for sermons if our lives were shining. There would be no need for words if we bore witness with our deeds. There would be no more pagans if we were true Christians. And this goes to the whole thing of like, you have to tell people what you think, and you have to stand up for the truth, and you have to, and do a lot of talking. We love to talk. And what he's saying is no words, no sermons, and no more pagans. Cut the words, cut the sermons, focus on you, your deeds, your actions, and your life. So I want you to compare what Abuna Bishoy Kamel just said and what St. John Chrysostom just said with what we see today in the United States sometimes. In case you don't know, this word is a very derogatory word. It's horrible. It's kind of like the N-word. These are people holding up signs saying God hates. This is what American Christianity used to look like. And this is one of the reasons why so many Americans hate Christians, because of signs like this. You can see the little boy, they put a shirt on him and made him stand up there on the street and hold up stuff like this. This isn't our Christianity. This isn't us. And I love this quote, "You know you have made God in your image when he hates the same people you do." These people are saying God hates. I don't think God hates. I think you hate. And you're projecting it onto God. And this isn't us. This isn't us. This is us. This is Father Greg Boyle. If you don't know him, he's amazing. You should Google him. St. Macarius says, Christians should judge no one, neither an open harlot, prostitute, nor sinners, nor dissolute people, but should look upon all with simplicity of soul, a pure eye, and purity of heart. Why judge no one? Because you don't know where they came from. You don't know their situation. You don't know how they got there. And I love this quote because I think it sets our perspective. This is from the Bustan, the Desert Fathers, the Paradise of the Fathers. It says, if you see your brother falling into sin, say without hesitation, I curse you, Satan, my brother is not to blame. Just stop there. When you see your brother falling, first thing you say, I curse you, Satan, my brother is not to blame. You see the difference? Who's the enemy? People are not the enemy. People are the sons of God. They're our brothers and sisters in Christ. They're not the enemy. There are no people who are the enemy. Satan is the enemy. And we have to be very clear that sometimes we think people are the enemy, and they're not. I told this story last time, and we don't have time. In the story of the prodigal son, sometimes I wonder, who are we in this story as a collective church? Imagine if the older brother had come out to greet his younger brother. I hope someday we're that older brother who goes out to greet their younger brother when they come back. When someone walks back into this church after a lifestyle they're not proud of, and we all know about the lifestyle they're not proud of, that we go out with the dad and we greet him. And imagine if the older brother the whole time had been praying for his brother's return. This should be our feeling as Christians. It shouldn't be keep them out, keep them away. We don't want them to get to our kids. We don't want them in the church. No. We're the older brother. We're back home. And imagine if we're praying for the brother to return and we're out there with Christ, greeting them back when they're ready. The church is a hospital. It's not a courtroom. This is a place for sick people. This is a place for broken people. This is a place for gay people, people who are struggling with all the different sins that are out there. This is where we get better. This is why we come here. Okay. I want to encourage you to have these conversations. Encourage to discuss details and specifics. Talk biologically. Talk anatomically. Read a book if you have to. I do, because I don't know all the words either. And have these discussions with your kids. One of the things I want to point out, and forgive me for doing this, but we have to address the issue. As a Coptic community, we have a bias. We come from an Arab Muslim culture. And in Islam, homosexuality is a very grave thing. And the church's position is often confused with this very harsh position of Islam. We need to learn that this is not Christianity. We don't take this sin and make it special and unique. These incorrect thoughts fuel this perception of bigotry in the church. Many youth leave the church because they feel the church is bigoted. They persecute certain people. That's a big reason why people leave the church, especially on this issue. And when we bring home, or we bring here, ideas from Islam into Christianity here, it really doesn't go well, right? In Egypt, it kind of goes because everyone says the same thing. Outside the church, inside the church, everyone's saying the same stuff. Here, it's very different. So it sticks out, right? So I found some quotes from an Islamic Q&A website. What is the punishment from homosexuality? It says, the punishment is to burn homosexuals with fire. And some of them viewed that they should be thrown down from a high place. You should push homosexuals off a cliff and have stones thrown at them. And some of them thought you should be stoned to death. The crime of homosexuality is one of the greatest of crimes. It's the worst of sins and the most abhorrent of deeds, and Allah punished those who did it in a way that He would not punish other nations. It is indicative of violation of the fitrah total misguidance, weak intellect, and lack of religious commitment. It is a sign of doom and deprivation of the mercy of Allah. We ask Allah to keep us safe and sound from these people. So you can see this is really strong stuff. And we bring some of these biases back with us. And then I want to talk, there are parents and families who are dealing with this issue. There are probably parents and families in this church who are dealing with this issue. Maybe not their kids, maybe not themselves, but a cousin, a relative, a friend. And we as a community have to bond together around these people. We have to bond together around our community and not judge and ostracize them. I'll tell you a very sad story. A lady called me and said she found out her son came out as gay on Instagram, and her sister found out. Her sister lives 1 mile away, and her sister has kids that are the same age. And she said that her sister told her kids the same age, the cousins, not to speak to this boy again, to delete his contact and not talk to him. And then she said, he's not allowed to come into my house. And she said, and she told her sister, you can come, but don't bring your son. In the name of God, because she is a righteous person. Does this sound Christian to anyone? Is this anything Jesus did? Did he do anything like that ever? And then there's the person who is struggling. Let me just paint this for you. If a boy comes up to Abuna and he's 24 and he says, Abuna, I just really want to have sex, and I'm having trouble holding myself back. Abuna says, okay, Habibi, don't worry, one of these days you'll get married and you can have sex. If someone who's struggling with same-sex attraction says that to Abuna, what does Abuna have to tell him? You'll never get married, no masturbation, no pornography. Till when, Abuna? Until you die. You're just going to sit there like that and burn until you die. Oh, and by the way, you're going to die alone because you won't get married. That's tough. That's a big cross. Now, I was just told this cross that I'm going to bear for the rest of my life. Do I want to bear it? Don't I need support? Don't I need someone to encourage me to struggle with that struggle? What if I come to the one place on earth that's safe, this church, the hospital, and then I show up and everyone hates me. And everyone says, get out of here. Can you imagine? Will I struggle? Will I fight that fight for the rest of my life? Nope. I'll just walk away. And that's on us. That's our duty, to be that place of safety. Okay, I'll just go through this one post I saw on Instagram and then I'll take questions. I'm sorry, I know it's... All right, so someone in our group back in Los Angeles, someone forwarded this post and it's really good, so I want to read it to you. It's about a parents who found out that their son was struggling. She said, and I think she's from Spain, so I think her English isn't great. How we could save our son. Our sensitive, loving, vulnerable son believed he was a girl for 2.5 years. This is what we did. We took him off social media. We encouraged him to do sports or physical activities so he could reconnect with his body as a male. We made our family dinners the most fun part of the day. Listening to music, making jokes, remembering when he was little, anecdotes and family stories. We made ourselves his reference, not culture. We stretched our bond as much as we could. We reinforced his self-esteem always, every hour. We were generous at recognizing the best in him. We watched movies and documentaries about sex and indoctrination. We spent time in nature and value what is natural. We encouraged him to meet with his old friends, the ones that knew him better. We turned our house into a place where they could have pizza and good times. We showed him the positive things about being a man and the different kinds of men there are. We enjoyed his music together. We became experts in gender. We learned, we read, we had long talks about what we discovered and the impact on him. We discussed how everybody can change their minds about an idea that they truly used to believe in. We talked about how growing up was for us, our fears and our frustrations. I was open with my son. We avoided talking about the theory of gender and only talked about our position in family counseling sessions. And then slowly, gently, and loving, he started to live, to go out, to grow up. Today, he is well and revived, his body intact, and so is his future. The approach was very positive. It was injecting love, injecting admiration, injecting self-esteem, right? From the inside out. That's usually the approach that works versus the top-down, forceful approach. Okay, I'll stop there. Oh, last thing. In the diocese, under the auspices of His Eminence Ambassador and Bishop Krylos and Abram, we have a website called hisbeloved.co. It is a support group for those who are struggling. So if you know someone who is struggling or someone who could use support, this group is not conversion therapy. It's a group that supports people who want to live a Christian lifestyle, right, and have same-sex attraction. And there are people in the group who say things like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll get married someday, right, so people there are unsure, right, and what they need is that support to struggle, to push back, and to fight the good fight, and that's what we're there for. Okay, this PDF I'm going to make available to you guys, and it's a good resource for people to look at. Okay, and that's all I have, and glory be to God forever. Amen.
Okay, we'll start Q&A, so Patrick will put a QR code if you want to text it, or we'll also have Mina and myself for live questions if you want to.
That slide or two slides that you had about the what the Muslims do and say, I think it's judgmental and we shouldn't judge. So please remove them from this.
I wasn't trying to be judgmental. I was just quoting it, but my apologies if you felt that way.
Anyone have questions live?
Is there a particular age, and I know you said to kind of start talking young, is there a particular age you recommend starting to talk to kids about these different things? And do you kind of let them lead the conversation and see what they know, or do you openly tell them more than you think they know?
So the best advice I got is whenever a child asks you a question, answer the question, right? But you don't have to go all the way every time, right? And again, it depends if it's a boy or a girl, it depends how curious they are. Some kids are just oblivious and some kids want to know all the details. So I would very consistently answer honestly, biologically, and as educated as you can possibly be, right? And give them small pieces. Don't go for the whole thing all at once. Answer the question, and sometimes you can just stop, right? And it's iterative, right? You're not going to have the talk over everything, but keep answering every little question. And the more you encourage it, and the more they'll kind of, open up. It's difficult to know what the exact right age is for every particular kid. Each one's different, and I would kind of gauge it based on their curiosity, right? If they ask you. But if you see that they're not asking anything, maybe probe a little bit. Have you ever wondered where babies come from? Or you ever wonder do you know where you came from? You were in mommy's tummy, and just start the conversation and see, well, how did I get there? And so you can start that conversation and just do it in little bite-sized pieces, I think.
There was a question yesterday you were going to address today. Do you have it? The index card?
Yes. I put this card in my
Anyone
pocket.
else while we're waiting?
Okay. On the topic of transgenderism, a lot of times people who are pro-transgender, end-all be-all point is that it's better to have a living daughter than a dead son, whatever the case may be. It puts the parent in a really tough position because on the one hand, they may take this as a valid point and abandon what's right, or if they say no, it looks like they don't care about the child's life. I've seen this situation on reality TV many times. I agree, this is a very common thing that people say. In my opinion, I think this is emotional blackmail, right? I don't think this is, these are necessarily true alternatives, right? It's trying to pull at your heartstrings and trying to use a scare tactic to say, if you don't agree to this, your son will die. And that's a scare tactic, and it's not okay. I don't think those are necessarily the options, right? The options I would pick are the ones this person showed us versus, you know, the other one. No. Okay. Oh, okay. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, Buna.
I have a question. I met with a person that having those kind of tendency, and I stayed with them for about 1 hour, 3 times, trying to tell them that's not what's meant to be, that's not what Christ wanted us to do, and stuff like this. And every time I ended the dialogue by, you don't understand actually what God wants us to do. You are interpreting the Bible in the wrong way. God does not mind if we do such a thing and this and this and this and saying, God is loving. What are you doing? You are torturing us. And I ended up having nothing to do. And I lost the dialogue after the 3rd time. Because every time I tried to tell her what God wants us to do, she said, you are interpreting the Bible in the wrong way.
That's tough. I guess my reaction is, you know, when, you know, in Luke 15, you have 2 parables, those 3 parables, but 2 parables. One is the lost sheep. And the lost sheep gets lost. But the lost sheep doesn't want to be lost. He wants to be with the flock. So the shepherd goes after the lost sheep. And the very next parable is the prodigal son. And the father doesn't go after the prodigal son. He lets him go. Because the prodigal son chose to go. And so all the father can do in that case is wait and pray and hope. So, you know, hopefully, God willing, we can get to this person earlier, before they get angry and before they hate, and before they hate the church and they hate God for all of the things that are in them. But I would say, you know, in my opinion, sometimes you just have to wait and pray. Because what I find is when people enter this lifestyle, they don't tend to be very happy. And just like the story of the prodigal son, they remember their father's house. And they remember that you sat with her 3 times for 1 hour, him for 1 hour. And they remember the love, and they remember the smile. And they remember the I'll pray for you. And when things get bad, people come back. I hope. I pray. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I saw your statistics and I was extremely shocked. I thought I was up to date on a lot of things, but to see that almost a fifth of Gen Z identify this way, is this only in the United States, or is it all over the world, or the free world, let's put it that way, or is it only United States? So if it's just here, it might be just the exposure of everybody to things that, to your point of, they get more attention, and this is a attention-seeking behavior rather than, you know, the true feeling of where they are. And my question is if I see my children in a state or you know, in a school that has exposure more than I'd like, do you recommend extracting them out of that situation into say a private school or a different state altogether, or some people may think of a different country altogether. So I want to think, what's your thoughts on how to extract them from that situation?
This is a hard one because I'm not you. I'm not your parent. I'm not the parent of your kids, and you, that's your call to make as you see fit. I can tell you what I did. I have 3 kids in college, and we raised them in public schools. And my feeling was, I don't want to bubble wrap them. I wanted to walk with them through it. And I recognize that now, in the last few years, it's gotten a lot worse than it used to be. I would say I would be active if I find a particular, teacher who's just really, has a lot of material in this, and maybe you feel this isn't appropriate or age appropriate. I would have discussions. I would go to PTA meetings. Personally, and I know this is not what a lot of people think, I don't know that extracting kids out of the world, even if it's for a certain period of time, works all that well. Because my experience has been these sheltered kids, they go to college and then they just go nuts, right? And then everyone, they'll go to the dorms and they also can't wait to get out of the house, right? And they want to go far away, anywhere there's a dorm. And they're trying to leave the oppression. Right? So the more that your house is this very safe, nice, fun place, the more they come back and the more they love you and the more they love your God, right? And it connects that way. So when there's a lot of, this kind of stuff, they go to college and then they see it all. And now you haven't had a chance to use the sickness analogy, to build immunity with them slowly. Right? You've had a kid in a room his whole life, and then you say, now go hang out in a pre-K, and all the kids are sick, and your kid just catches everything like that, right? And that's sort of what happens in college, because you haven't, so you want to walk with them in the 2nd grade when there's this little stuff, because it doesn't go away in high school or college, right? And walk through with them, right? Be there inside, supporting them, growing with them, communicating with them, and so that they're bouncing stuff off you all the time, right? And the dream is to have that relationship where your kid's constantly texting you, hey, I've got this friend saying this, what should I say back, and what should I do here, and or your daughter's boyfriend is in a fight with whatever, and she's reaching out to her mom and her dad, and that's the bogey, right? Versus we're gonna isolate you, and then the kids are like, hey, what's out there? What'd you keep from me? What didn't you tell me about? What are you so scared of? If you have the truth, then you should have no fear, right? So again, they sense that confidence from you, and they take it with them in the world. My dad knows what's out there, and he's not scared. What's the questions from last night are here too. Okay. Okay. Are you supposed to correct behavior if a boy acts like a girl or girl acts like a boy, especially the way they talk or act? Again, how old is the kid? Some little boys, every once in a while, they're 4 or 5, they wear a purse because mom wears a purse, right? And now your reaction, if you go crazy on the kid, it's not good, right? The kid's frightened. What's going on, right? There's a video we saw, that I saw of a conference where this young boy, he fell asleep. There's a sleepover, and this other boy fell asleep, and they're sitting on the couch watching TV, and one kid fell asleep, and his head fell on the other boy's shoulder. Okay, they're 10. The mom came down, saw the boy with his head on her son's shoulder, and said, if you end up being gay, you can leave this house. He's 10, right? And so sometimes our reactions can be overreactions, right? If you pull the purse away from the kid, or you give the girl a Barbie and you say, "Be Barbie," right? And you have these very forceful reactions, right? It could actually scare the child, and I don't think it's very healthy. I think sometimes a nice, slow, calm, natural progression is better, right? So you see your boy, for example, and he's not playing with a lot of, hey, let's go outside and throw the ball around, right? Instead of let me attack the thing you're doing, let me put something else in your hand and let's go outside and play baseball. Or the mom will say, hey, let's go and whatever, paint her nails or whatever moms do. So I was there in my house, the kids growing up, but just not really. So that's how I'd answer that question. Yes.
هو الحقيقة مش سؤال إنما كومنت أو محاولة إني أنا أفهم.
قولي بالعربي وانا ترجم.
أوكي. حضرتك قلت إن أنا مش كاهن، فأنا المفروض إن أنا ما أعملش جادجمنت لأي واحد وأقول الكنيسة ممكن تناوله أو لأ. فلما يجي ابني يسألني في البيت تفتكري الكنيسة موافقة على السلوك ده ولا لأ؟ فأنا أقول له الكنيسة أكيد مش موافقة، واكيد ما ينفعش ان هم يتناولوا. ده مش كلامي الحقيقه، ده كلام الانجيل وكلام الدسقليه. ده حتى الكنيسه عملت قانون للزاني انه بيقعد فتره في اختبار وفي تجربه وفي ان هو يتمنع من التناول لحد ما بيرجع والكاهن يقر ان هو تايب عن الخطيه دي، وبعد كده يبتدي يناوله. فانا مش بحكم عليه، انما انا بقول اللي الكنيسه قالته وقوانين الرسل قالته ان دي خطية وإن ما ينفعش يتقدم للكنيسة أو للتناول وهو في هذه الخطية أو هو بيمارس هذه الخطية. إحنا كلنا تقريبا ما عندناش مثال قدامنا للناس دي. إحنا كلنا يمكن كنا بنسمع من أولادنا إن عندهم في الكلاس أو في المدرسة حد جايز، وبنبتدي نتعامل معاهم على الأساس طب أنت بتعرفه منين؟ طب هو اتكلم معاك إزاي؟ انما احنا ما عندناش خبره حقيقيه وتواصل مع حد يكون كده. عشان كده كلنا جات كونفيوزد، احنا نتعامل معاهم ازاي، نقول لاولادنا ايه وهم بيتعاملوا معاهم او المفروض. النقطه الثانيه ان انا ما عنديش بروف ان انا لو قلت لابني يتعامل معاه، هو كده كده بيتعامل معاه لانه معاه في نفس الجروب في نفس الكلاس وات ايفر. انما هو انا لما اقول له يعني ايه الشعرايه اللي تفصل ما بين حبه وتعامل معاه وان انت ما تبقاش زيه، اللي هو انا ما عنديش ايفيدنس ان هم الناس اللي بيسلكوا بالواي دي رجعوا عن الطريق ده. احنا ما سمعناش ده، احنا سمعنا ان هم بيفضلوا مكملين برغم ان احنا بنتكلم معاهم، وزي ما ابونا قال ان هو قعد كذا مره وهم عندهم نفس الفكر. فانا ايه المطلوب من ابني؟ ان انا اقول له اتعامل معاهم، اتكلم معاهم، اتواصل معاهم، حبهم واتيفر اللي حضرتك قلته من الاول، اني انا ابني ما ينجذبش ليهم ويبقى زيهم. احنا كلنا عندنا الخوف ده او النقطه دي مش واضحه بالنسبه لنا. الحاجه الثانيه حضرتك قلت ان احنا
واحده عشان
اتفضل.
The first thing yes. Yeah, I'll translate, I'll paraphrase. The first thing she says is when my son asks, what about these people and should they take communion? I told him that there is canons that say that people who are engaging in these sexual acts are not allowed to take communion for a certain amount of time, etc., etc. And the first thing I'll say is there are canons that say if we went by many canons, most of the people in this room will not take communion for a very long time. And so this picks out a particular sin and says, there's a canon against that. Well, there's a canon against all of you in here. And if we followed all of them, then it'd be a rough go for the communion line would go much faster, but it would be a rough go. So it shouldn't be that we pick out this particular thing and say this is the canons of the apostles, but everything else is, we let it go. يعني بسرعة كده يعني في خطية كتيرة فيها قدامها قوانين. معظم الخطية اللي احنا بنعملها في الكنيسة، فالناس اللي في الكنيسة، فمش عايزين احنا ننقي الخطية دي بالذات ونقول لا بس دي فيها قدامها قوانين الرسل بس، طب والتانيين اصل ابنك برضو نبيه هيقول لك طب انا هطلع بقى القوانين دي اهو، في قانون انت ماما شتمت امبارح، في قانون ضد الشتيمه دي.
ما فيش قانون بيمنع من التناول لو انا شتمت او كذبت او سرقت. في قانون بيمنع لو انا زنيت. في قانون بيمنع لان ده انفصال عن ربنا. انما باقي الخطايا ما فيش قانون.
ها في قانون لو انت مش صايم بس
أوكي،
يعني
في قانون، صح.
take the mic. So what I would يعني بصي اللي احنا عايزين نركز فيها اوكي ان مش نقعد نركز في القانون بيقول ايه. يعني احنا في العهد الجديد بتاع المسيح، مش عايزين نقعد نركز في مين عمل ايه غلط والقانون اللي ضد الغلط. احنا نركز في المذبح وفي المسيح. اوكي بص انا يعني لو مش يعني ما تعمليش لو مش عايزه يعني، بس لما الخوف انك تقولي لو انت يعني اتكلمت مع الولد ده هتبقى زيه. هو طبعا الهوموسيكشواليتي مش برد يعني، مش هاخدها بالطريقه دي. فهو يعني ممكن انا اسال سؤال تاني. So when she said if you're gay, your son's friend is gay, can he I don't want him to make my son gay as well. And so I said, it doesn't get communicated that way, right? But I can say that it's not just about being gay. It's about any sin that I see my son's friend have. Okay? فهو مش شرط بس الخطية دي. لو انت ابنك اي صاحبه اي واحد من اصحابه اللي في الكنيسة بيعملوا حاجات مش تمام، هو ممكن ياخد الحاجات دي العادات دي منهم. وياما بلاوي بتحصل في الكنيسة وفي الريتريتس وكل الحاجات دي. فأي خطية هي فانت خلي بالك بدل ما تقولي أصل ده جاي فأنا عشان كده مش عايزك تكلمه، دي هترجع بعد 15 سنين يعني هتقرصك، عشان هو هيقولك طب ماما انت كنت بتعملي كده فيا ليه؟ عشان أنا دلوقتي اتقابلت، انت قلتي أنا ما قابلتش حد، أنا اتقابلت وهم كويسين وهم مش زي ما انت قلتي يا ماما، فهيرجع عليكي. فأنا أقول أفضل بدل ما تقولي عشان هو جاي، قولي أصل ده عنده خطية معينة دي ممكن أنت تاخدها. لو ده بيشتم بيحلف بيشرب بيعمل أي حاجة، أنا أتفضل إن أنت ما تتقربش للأصحاب دي. خلينا في الأصحاب الكويسين، مش بس ده في الكنيسة وده بره، لا خليك في الناس الكويسة. الخطية ركز إيه في الناس الكويسة. هو بيساعد الفقراء، بيساعد بيخدم ناس تانية، كلامه حلو، ركز في دول بدل ما تقولي كنيسة مش كنيسة، أمريكاني مصري، جاي مش جاي. فاهم قصدي؟ يعني كل واحد صاحبه بني آدم مختلف، فأنت واحد تفرزي كل واحد كده تقول طب كلمني عليه شوية عشان هو يحس إن إيه، لا ماما مفتحة معايا شايفة اللي أنا شايفه. عشان أنت زي ما أنت قلتي أنت مش شايفة فأنت خايفة، وأنا مقدر. لكن لو حطيتي الخوف ده عليه هو هيرجع وهتقرصك بعد كام سنة يعني ماشي؟
Do you mind if I just هو نقطة معينة عشان موضوع المناولة ده وأحيانا البانشمنت وحاجات زي كده. هو احنا لما نقول للعيال لو عملت كده مش هتتناول، طب بقى أني يعني وش أنا بقول له ما تتناولش، بدل ما أقول له روح لأبونا أبقى اعترافك وكلم معاه وأبونا يحكم يتناول أو ما يتناولش، صايم مش صايم، طب روح لأبونا حكي معاه talk to him. أنا ما أقولوش ما تتناولش عشان يمكن أبقى اعترافه فاهم هو محتاج مناولة، محتاج المناولة بتقويه عشان يكمل. أنا ما مستخدمش المناولة أو الكنيسة كرد فعل ما تتناولش أو المفروض ما تتناولش. أقول له أشجعه يروح لأبونا يكلم مع أبونا حكي معاه وأبونا يقول له يتناول أو ما يتناولش. So in English what I'm saying is that this idea of church and communion shouldn't be our role even as parents, and I can say no, this is what should we do, but don't say no, don't take communion. Some parents will tell the kid no, don't take communion, you did this. I'm preventing him from communion, and communion is what's making him keep going. It's what's giving him the strength to keep going. Even me as a priest, we tell somebody don't take communion. And it's hard for a priest to tell somebody don't take communion. What if something happens to that person? And I was the one that prevented him from communion. But I encourage him to go talk to Abuna, to sit with Abuna, tell him your feelings, tell him what's going on. And Abuna will be the judge who should take communion, who should not take communion, who should enter church and who should not enter church. I think this was a big point even yesterday. This person is entering church. I should prevent them. Why? Why should I prevent them? Yani this is my father's house. This is not my house or Abuna's house. So who enters, who takes communion, who's with us? Yani somebody called me one time, said, do you know who this person is that you give communion? He's so and so and so and so and so and so. I said, do you know that I talked with him and I know who he is? And you don't know what this person has been doing in his spiritual life. You don't know if he sat with Abuna or not. So why are we judging somebody when we don't know? This is the biggest point, I think, is the conviction. We're throwing judgment when we don't know their life at all. We may know some history, but we don't know anything about them. We don't know what they've done and what they're doing now in their lives. And so we should stay away from this judgment and the communion. Just encourage, teach your children. Sorry, we said it yesterday to John 17. I don't want to take them out of the world, but keep them from the evil one. Teach your children that what's right and what's wrong. When you take them away, you show them you don't trust them. I didn't teach you right. I don't trust that you're able to. I like what you said about being active in their lives. If I'm active in their life, then I won't worry. If I know what they're watching on YouTube Kids or on their YouTube channel, then I won't worry. But طول ما أنا سايبهم, I leave them, then I start worrying because I don't know what they're doing. I don't know who their friends are. I don't know where they're going. And then if I'm over too much on them, then like you said, then they leave. They do stuff privately and they want to do stuff when they get their freedom. And then they want to, and eventually when they get older, they don't tell you. They want to live their life. They want to experiment. They want to do because we were so hard on them. So it's very important to give them the space, right? And to just netaba, to follow up with them. And please, the idea of communion and the church, encourage them to come. Don't push them away. Because when I tell them the church says you can't take communion, well, then they're going to hate the church. If the church is pushing me away, but you're actually pushing them away, not the church. The church is very loving. The church says, okay, that you did this, come talk to me, and then we'll give you the absolution, then you take communion. So don't tell them the church, أبونا هيزعل منك. Even in الحاجات البسيطة, ده أبونا يزعل منك. بتعملش كده. طب why تكرهه في أبونا? why say Abuna is going to be very upset with you? God is going to be very upset with you if you do this. Why? Teach them the love, not the hate. Yeah.
Let's take one here on the computer. And then back there after.
Thank you so much, Abuna. That was perfect. Okay. Okay. All right, so this one is a criticism of me. We have 3 kids in the public school and never encountered kids coming home with books about LGBTQ topic or it being assigned. It is not covered in their sex ed specifically. I'm curious what evidence you have regarding the slides and books you put up. This is just putting fear in parents' minds. I understand that we need to be vigilant, but the reality is that this is not happening in the schools as you say. I think that's a fair criticism. I certainly didn't mean to intend that it's happening in all the schools. There are different districts that are more liberal than other districts. I come from Southern California. We happen to be liberal. And there are different parts of Southern California that are more or less liberal, and you find that this is state-specific things, county-specific things, etc. So I certainly don't mean to say that all schools do all of these things, and it could even be teacher specific. You may have one teacher who chooses certain books and they teach next to the 3rd grade class next to them and they don't choose those books. And so teachers have leeway even within a school in the same grade sometimes. So I don't mean to generalize, and I do really appreciate the point that you are just putting fear in parents' minds. I don't mean to do that. What I was trying to do was to relate to you and to your fears, but I agree that there is too much fear. And a lot of times there are things that go around on the WhatsApp chats and the Facebooks that are just very specific. You know, there's this one teacher in Idaho who does this one thing, right? And next thing you know, he's nationally famous, and they say, look what they teach in the schools, right? And it's just this one person doing this one thing, right? And so I apologize, and I agree that generalizing what happens in one place should not go across, and that fear is, you know, not a healthy tool. So I apologize for that generalization. Yeah, go
Question
ahead.
here.
Very interesting statement at the beginning of your talk is saying that we don't know what the reason is, which was very fascinating, yet we're still making judgment, but it is in the Bible, which is fine. I'm not trying to make a point for or against, but I'm trying to ask a question. My daughter is 11. She has two friends. This is just fictitious, but she has two friends. One gay, openly gay, identified herself as gay, yet she serves, she does good, she doesn't swear, she doesn't drink, she doesn't hang out with boys. But here's this other girl that is straight, but she's known that she's been sleeping around, drinking, blah, 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 all of the above.
At 11?
Sure. Sure. Which one is my daughter better off with?
Well, if she's 11, I think you have bigger problems. I know it's hypothetical. What do you think? Yeah, well, honestly, if you know, if I had to pick between those two, I'd pick the gay one. Because if you've got the person who's drinking and sleeping and doing all the things, I mean, hello, that's no good, right? And I think this kind of comes back to the point I made earlier, is just simply labeling someone who has this attraction, especially at the age of 11, right? And that's obviously hypothetical, but the kids are confused too, right? And maybe she just needs attention, and maybe she just needs a friend, and maybe she's got some feelings that are going to go away in a few months, and she has no idea. So the bigger fear here is creating bigotry against a certain class of people that's unjustified, right? You know, as you know, MLK says, you know, judged by the color of your skin, not the content of your character, right? And this is just another way for that to happen. Yeah. Take Kiro.
Mark, thank you for coming. Tina
Anytime.
sends her love. She's sorry she couldn't be here. I don't know how to follow Kareem's question, but it's something that this recently came up. I had a guy at the hospital, I mean, really messed up leg, has a bunch of other problems, right? Narcotic dependent, all this stuff. Truly ghelben, right? He can't use his leg, wheelchair bound. I'm like, okay, well, let's try to fix your leg. And because of all the other issues, he starts being abusive to everybody around him. The nurses, the staff, to the point where we have to get security and put him in restraints and all this stuff, and he likes to blame his anxiety and so on, right? My point is, like, this is a hospital, I clearly work at a hospital, but I reached a point with this patient where I'm like, I can't take care of you anymore. Like, you're hurting my people. Do we reach a line, and this isn't just for homosexual or LGBT, it's like, when do we reach a line with the strugglers? Because he wants to get better, he says he wants to get better, he's clearly struggling, but he's hurting people on the struggle. How do we balance our love for the patient and the protection of our other patients?
That's a great question and a great analogy. You know, when you say it like that, it's very clear that there is a point at which a patient can be dangerous to other patients. So let's just go down the line, right? If someone walks into this church and physically assaults anyone in the church, I'm going to immediately call security and have them removed, right? Just for the safety of everyone else. Verbally assaults anyone in the church, I'm going to have them removed. Spiritually, you know, there's a well, I'll skip that one. But I would say the danger with the spiritual one is when you said that patient was being verbally and physically abusive to the nurses and to the other patients, that is an event of certainty, right? I'm watching you hit her. That is unsafe, right? If I'm evaluating someone's spiritual health and spiritual danger, it's a bit more difficult, right? Now, if I see them walking around and they're holding a pride flag and they're saying, you know, you guys are all brainwashed and, you know, this place is whatever, you know, I may feel sorry for that person as well, right? But okay, you know, if it's more visible, that's one thing, right? But I think most of the time that isn't the case. And that internal struggle that I want to get better is very difficult to evaluate from the outside, right? And so what I would say is, and when it goes back to what the Abuna said, is, you know, he said someone called and said, you know, the person you just gave communion does this, which is also spiritually dangerous to the other patients in this hospital, right? I mean, there's people in this room who judge one another, gossip about one another, and destroy each other's lives. This happens in churches, right? St. John Chrysostom says, you fast from meat, but you eat the flesh of your brother in gossip, okay? That is spiritually destroying people, right? That is a patient who is dangerous. And that patient will also be spoken to by Abuna or a servant and say, you know what? You're spreading rumors about people, you're gossiping about people, you're destroying people's lives. This needs to stop. You are hurting the other patients now, right? Your disease is now infectious, right? And can hurt others. So it doesn't have to be that this, what you described, can happen with any sin, right? And it's all across the board. And it is the responsibility of the clergy or maybe the servants to intervene at that point and say, this person is a danger to the other people, okay? I think that line exists somewhere, okay? I feel like with this particular sin, that line is pretty low. Like, have you had a thought? All right, then you're a danger to my kid, all right? I need to quarantine and isolate you, you know? And so I think the line for this sin more than the others, right? I mean, the kids in Sunday school, the boys, they talk about girls. They say all kinds of inappropriate things. They infect one another. There are boys who tell other boys about really bad things. And everyone's like, boys will be boys, right? And that may even be more destructive than this one internal person who's struggling silently. And then everyone finds out and everyone's like, oh, no, get this guy out of here. He's going to damage my kid. And it's like, you know what? This other kid's been damaging your kid for 5 years, you know, and you don't seem to have a problem with it. So my fear is the line that you're discussing is higher, is lower, if you will, that.
Yeah, certainly. I don't think it's necessarily like this one topic we're talking about. I mean, like we can talk about gluttony all day and how it's affect half the people in this room, right? So it's like, it's just the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not swole, right? But like, it's one of those things that we struggle with. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you've come into any of your research or reading where it's like, all right, I need to look for these specific signs, because certainly there are physical signs and there are audible signs. What can we do as parents, as parishioners, to say like, all right, I saw the sign, now we need to do an intervention. We need to I love the fact that you're talking about listening. We need to listen. That's the most important thing. When does the passive approach, which is really important, get flipped in like, okay, now I need to do something?
My contention is that line is a priest line. That's squarely in the priest job purview, right? Because only they can get on the inside of this person, get their psyche, get their understanding, know what's going on, what they can and can't do, because, you know, again, that question is very context specific, age specific, right? And so I would immediately defer to the clergy on that one and say, let them let them be the cells that come in and quarantine this virus. Yeah, sure. Okay. I think we talked about this.
While he does that, I'll do a time check. It's 1:10. How much longer do you want to go with questions? Keep going? Okay. Okay. I'll do another time check in about 10 minutes.
I don't care if it's awkward. I'm going to give you a hug. See you, bro.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Oh my gosh. How do you handle someone coming out to you and hinting they will hurt themselves if others find out? We addressed this briefly yesterday. If someone comes out to you, and I can't emphasize this enough, please, please, please remember this is an extremely confidential matter. There is only, I would say that the only human being you could ever tell is a priest. No one else. Not your wife, not your husband, not your kids, no one. Right? This is a very, very private matter, and people's lives can be destroyed by this fact, especially given the environment that we're in. And if they say they'll hurt themselves if others find out, you have to be there for them, and you have to monitor that situation. If someone is threatening harm to themselves, you may need to say something to someone. You may have a legal responsibility if they are actually suicidal or actually could harm themselves to tell a professional somewhere about it, such that, it doesn't happen. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, certainly in those positions, but I'd even say as a friend, if it's above your pay grade and this is getting really serious, I would try to talk to someone, at least a priest, initially. How can we be respectful and loving of transgender people we meet without offending them? I don't see why those are mutually exclusive. I can be loving, and I think loving means not offending them. The issue of pronouns comes up quite a bit, and the way I feel about that is someone really wants me to call me something. We were discussing this yesterday. If my name is Athanasius, okay, and I want you to call me Etha, I don't know, I'm making this up, bad example. Okay, if my name is Johnny and I want you to call me John, I'm going to call you John, even though your actual name is Johnny, because that's what I prefer to be called, right? And so some of the times, especially in the case of pronouns, there could be all kinds of issues going, there could be mental illness behind this, right? And so in the case of, if someone has dementia, for example, we can say to, the doctors will tell somebody, if you're parenting someone with dementia and say her husband died a few years ago and she says, well, my husband is coming next week, you go along with it, right? And you say, oh yeah, he's going to be here, right? And you don't fight them on that, right? You go along with the dementia, and that's sort of the best way to kind of calm it down until it passes. And so for me, sometimes when people are very rabid about their pronouns, I think the easiest, best thing to do is just say the pronoun that they would like to be called, right? And just sort of let that time pass. What's your advice about sleepovers with friends? I heard multiple speakers advise parents not to allow sleepovers except with cousins. What's your advice? This is a general rule. I don't like general rules. I know someone who only had sleepovers with her cousins, and he sexually molested her for years because they only had sleepovers with their cousins. So there's no guarantee that the cousins are the safe ones. Once again, what about sleepovers with friends? Evaluate the friends carefully. And different parents have different rules. Like, we had a rule, just talking about ourselves, we didn't do sleepovers at other people's houses. We had people come over and sleep over at our house. They're welcome to come sleep over here where we're watching, but we don't do the sleepovers at other people's houses. And it was important that it was a general rule across everybody. It wasn't not the gay people, or not the black people, or not the whatever people, right? That's really bigoted, okay? But as long as it's a general ruling, so we don't do sleepovers at whatever, that's okay, right? I think, as long as you're consistent and there's no hatred behind it and you explain to the child why. But if you start going through your friends and say, okay, you can sleep over his house, but not his, and oh no, wait, I think I heard something about him from somebody, so no, and now you're just being really judgmental. And you're going on a very superficial level, you don't know anything. And your kid knows you don't know anything. And they're like, you know, the kid you told me I can sleep at his house, do you know what he does? And you have no idea? So now they're even questioning your judgment as to whether or not you actually can pick apart the good kids and the bad kids. Sometimes as parents, we give ourselves way too much credit. I have to protect my kids, you know, when they're 4, but you don't really think you're going to really protect them from the world, do you? Right? You can arm them and give them the strength and the support and the love to go into the world and be a light in that world, you know, as Abuna said, right? But this idea that, you know, what I do will be heroic and save my child or damn my child, you're giving yourself too much credit. Sorry. Okay, any other questions? I don't know. There's lots, none of which I want to answer. I don't want to answer any of these. Another person wrote, these books are in the public schools and the public libraries. There are trans books and all the kids and and they're very upset at whoever said the first thing. And they're both upset at me, so that's good. So, well, what happened? Can you go over the approach again, going off of what Abuna said he told the scripture and that it's not what Christ wants, but maybe explain that saying you're wrong first is not the correct approach and will cause frustration and pain. Okay, that's a fair point. In the slides yesterday, I put up a slide that said connect before you correct. Connect before you correct. And the psychologist teaches us that I don't take advice unless I feel like the person gets me. If I think you don't get me or you don't know who I am and you're just talking, I don't listen. I just tune out people, right? And once I connect with someone, they'll listen to me, right? And we see this in the story of the adulterous woman, right? First thing Jesus does is what? Does he say, go and sin no more? Does he? No. That's the last thing he does. First, he does what? Saves her life. Second, he makes the bad people go away that are throwing stones. Third, he doesn't judge her. He developed what? A relationship with her, right? After at this point, and he did it very quickly, it took him 10 minutes, but it's going to take us a bit longer. At this point, she's looking up at him like, you saved my life, you made me feel good about myself, and you never judged me. I would do anything for this guy. I'm with him. I'm what? I'm a Christian. And then he says, now that you're a Christian, go and sin no more. So he developed the relationship first, and then he corrected. That's the model of Christ. If you start with no canons, laws, this, hell, blah, 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 and you don't have that relationship with your child, it's just not going to go anywhere, right? So again, it's about the approach. Start with the listening and the talking before you go for the jugular. Okay, someone else very not happy with me. I'll read it. Respectfully, we disagree with your approach, we being you, with your approach toward accepting the LGBT community. I don't know which talk you heard. When I say accepting, I mean accepting people, and I mean loving people, and I mean labeling every sinner as a sinner. And yes, I label every sinner as a sinner, and I love every person equally, and I do not distinguish between that sin or that sin. Is that you? Tamale. Huh? What's that? Oh, your daughter's making a... عرفت ايش ربي. So what I'm saying is I quoted to you the Bible. I'm talking to you about the way Christ interacted with people. In other talks, I quoted the fathers. So I'm not sure which part of love your neighbor as yourself is disagreed with here. But I'm not saying we accept their sin or a lifestyle. I never said that. But what I am saying is these are people, and they deserve the respect of being the sons of God. And they are sinners, and you are a sinner. Our responsibility as a church is to speak the biblical truth about this type of sin. Our responsibility as a church is to deny myself, carry my cross, and follow him. My responsibility as a church is to he increase and I decrease. Your responsibility as a Christian is to acquire the Holy Spirit and become changed. Your responsibility as a Christian is not to speak the truth at everybody. To be the light of the world is not the same as barking at people with verses and taking the Bible and using it as a weapon against other people. I find it very disturbing you do not mention any of the biblical references about homosexuality and sodomy, and that they will not inherit the kingdom of heavens. All sin does not inherit the kingdom of heaven, including those. The reason I did not cite them is because they are cited all the time, and everyone loves to cite them. But there are other verses in the Bible, some of which apply to you and me and everyone in this room, and those also don't inherit the kingdom of heaven. I also disagree you made LGBTQ equal to other sins. I disagree that you disagree. I believe they are equal to other sins. I believe Christ once said, if you call your brother a fool, you have the same hellfire as anyone else, as a murderer. Correct? So all the sins lead to the same place. When St. Paul talks about the sins, he lists them all, one after the next. And they're all just in commas separating them. Huh? Oh, which one are you thinking of? The falling short of the mark, or what do you? Yeah, so the definition of sin is missing the mark. All sin is missing the mark. If you miss the mark, you are sinning. We are all sinners. In the Litany of the Departed, we say, no one is free from sin, and his life would not pure if his life were what? A single day on earth. This is the church that I go to. This is the stance that we take. Also disagree you made LGBT sins other sins, but we draw a distinction between temporary lust and a stubborn gay person. This language is very hard to hear. Temporary lust, I know men that are in their 50s who still lust. And I know people in their 60s who still lie, and who still judge, and who still hate. So I don't know that lusts are temporary. I think passions, they get rooted in us, and they're very hard to get rid of. I know people who are still angry in their 70s and bitter. And then describing someone as a stubborn gay person is hateful and inappropriate. When people have same-sex attraction, there are people who struggle for decades against that attraction. And they pray harder than all of us to get rid of it, and they don't. They are not stubborn gay people. Now, occasionally, I think what happens is someone gets on TV and says a lot of hateful things about the church, Pride Month, or what, they're very, movement focused. And that person becomes the poster boy of all gay people. and said, oh yeah, no, I watched TV. I watched Fox News. I saw what these people say. And these are not all the people. This is one person. And so you ascribing everybody as stubborn gay people is not loving. That's not the way Christ talked. Between a stubborn gay person who does not intend to repent. I have sins I don't intend to repent. We appreciate your service, thank you, to this group of struggling individuals, but the solution is not to have the entire community accommodate their sins. I never said that. I said everyone has sins, and all of us accommodate all of us all the time. In the hospital, everyone is sick, and we all accommodate each other's sins. This is a community of sinners. That's what the church is. But rather to work with each of them to reach repentance. I absolutely think we should work with each of them to reach repentance. I never said, don't work with them to reach repentance. Repentance is the only goal. It is the only goal for them. It is the only goal for you. And is the only goal for the rest of us. We're all in the same boat. Reach the goal of repentance. The point I'm trying to make is, how do you get them there? And my argument is by shoving things down people's throat, attacking them, calling them nasty names, will not encourage them to repentance, nor would it encourage you to repentance. Finally, medical education, I think that's a word, teaches us homosexuality is a mental illness, but you made it sound predisposition conditions. What I did say is that we don't know what causes homosexuality. We don't understand it. Is there a gay gene? No one's found one. Are there markers? Maybe. Are there conditions in the environment? Maybe. Are there predispositions? Maybe. There's a lot of research out there, and we don't really understand it. It was classified as a mental illness before in the DSM. Many years ago. It's been removed. You can argue about that, whether or not it should be removed. I don't know. I think that's history. I think that's the world we live in. And my point isn't about why you're gay or what happened or what your past was. The point I want to make is, if someone walks into this church and they're in this situation now, we have to deal with the person now, the human being who's the image of God now, right in front of me. This 17-year-old boy or this girl who is struggling now. I don't need to go back and say, in 1975 it was here, then it got removed. These are arguments that people make, and they're entitled, and knock yourself out to make those arguments. And we can have these debates, but here in this church, that's not the point. Okay, I think I'll stop now.
I think I personally learned a lot from what you said, really. And it's an eye-opener for a lot of things that I am on the top of the list, being ignorant. What is this phenomenon? I didn't even know how to pronounce it, LPGT or what. It was new to me, and that's why we have never talked to the children or to the youth about it. Because if I don't know the situation, how can I advise them? But I think most of the talk that you said, how to deal with individual, that we know about it in the church. As you said, the one who come to the hospital is the one who's suffering. And for those kind of people, we have to hug them and bring them in. But there is another type that they are pushing themselves on us, who are forcing us to accept their lifestyle. With those, we will say, no, thank you. But with those who are coming or among us, that we see that they are suffering, we will carry them on our shoulder and walk with them. And this is the message of Christ. Thank you very much, because you also stressed on the different approach that we should take, that we should not be afraid of tackling the situation, and we will be calm and give them time to think and time for us to listen. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Thank you, dear Lord, for allowing us to come to your house and to participate in your body and your blood. And we all became one in you. We share your life, we share your joy, and we are filled with love. Help us to be like you, wise, courageous, pure, helpful, accepting, opening our arms to hold those who cannot walk. Let us have the mind of Christ, and let us also be full of wisdom. What do we say, and when do we say it? Thank you very much for the information that we have received through Mark. Reward him with the rewards of heaven. And thank you for talking to our hearts. And we came here to understand and to hear the message and to apply it. Help us to examine ourselves before we judge anybody else. And we'll be truthful to look at self and ask for forgiveness. Through the intercession of Saint Virgin Mary and all of the heavenly choir, through the prayer of the martyrs and saints, hear us, O Lord, when we pray thankfully as you taught us, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one, through Christ Jesus our Lord. For thy is the kingdom, power, and glory forever and ever. Amen.